Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cultivate 2020, HydraFiber's virtual tech tips. Today, we're going to be talking about perennial and shrub production in HydraFiber-based substrates. Hello, my name is Daniel Norton. I'm the Senior Technical and R&D Manager for Horticulture here at Profile Products, and I thank you very much for joining us today for this webinar. So first, let's just give a very brief overview about the HydraFiber family. We have two products that are available right now, HydraFiber Ultra and HydraFiber Easy Blend. And we have some information that's on our website as well as in our booth that dives in a little bit more into both of these products. So I highly encourage you to take a look at some of those materials we have available. But in general, both of these products are made from southern yellow pine, which is harvested within about a 75-mile radius of our plant in Conover, North Carolina. It's thermally refined, which is a proprietary wood refining process that we've developed internally at Profile Products. We basically use heat, steam, and pressure to soften and fast cook the wood chips, and then we dry it as a last stage, which creates a very lightweight and a very stable and inert and sterile raw material that growers all across North America have been adopting into their growing media. It's 100% completely renewable. Chips are a byproduct of the lumber industry. When the logs are debarked and cut into boards, there's always waste wood that's left over. It's completely virgin, it's unused. We get it in chips and we bring it into our factory and we use it to make HydraFiber. Our plant is located in North Carolina, just outside of Charlotte. So it's a domestic product that's available all across North America. It has a lot of very unique physical properties, and that is 98% total porosity, which gives very good water retention as well as excellent aeration into most substrates. Both products are OMRI listed and available for organic use. And we also make both products available in towers, 95 cubic foot towers, as well as small 50-pound bales. And as I mentioned today, I'd like to touch on perennial and shrub crops and using HydraFiber. Now, when we brought HydraFiber to the North American marketplace about 5 years ago, many of the growers that we began working with initially were bedding plant growers who are growing indoors or inside greenhouses, excuse me. So like petunias and patience, things like that. That's really what we started to work with. But as we grew the business and as we started talking with more and more growers, there was a lot of questions that we got about HydraFiber and would it be suitable in not only outdoor production, but would it also hold up easily in longer term crops such as perennials and shrubs. So the one question we got from a lot of growers is, does it work? And our question was, well, why wouldn't it work? It's working with all the largest growers all across the country, and we think it could be a good fit, but we wanted to take a very careful look at it and run some trials at both growers as well as with some of our independent university partners to see, just how does it fare. Are there any potential risks in using wood-based products in perennial productions? So that's the key question that we wanted to look at. We hadn't seen any issues in other plants, but again, we just wanted to ask the question. And the opposite question of that is, what are the potential benefits of using HydraFiber in perennial production? Are there any things that growers can learn and take advantage of when they use HydraFiber? But first, before we get into some of the answers to those questions, let's look at how our growers across the country have been embracing change by utilizing HydraFiber in perennial and shrub production. So let's start by taking a look at some examples from the field. So in this image is a trial from a grower in the Midwest that is now using HydraFiber across their entire operation. In this particular trial, the plant on the right contains 30% HydraFiber 160, and on the left-hand side is a conventional peat, perlite, and bark-based substrate. And as you can tell, both look excellent. However, we do see an advantage to rooting in the HydraFiber-based mix, and this is something that we see with a lot of our bedding plant customers, as they note, we're getting really, really good root development, and that ties back into the very first slide that I mentioned, that HydraFiber is 98% total porosity, and what that does is typically we're able to maintain or maybe slightly increase the water holding capacity, but the one thing that we really get a benefit on because of that high total porosity is we typically see a significant increase in airspace to the root zone. And many other raw materials can't really make that claim because you're usually sacrificing either water holding or airspace. You can't really have both. But in this instance, because we have almost 100% total pore space, we can have that unique characteristic for this mix. So here's an example of from another grower. I believe this is out of Canada, that was trialing Buddleia, again in a 30% HydraFiber mix with 160. This was a shot that I took at a grower, again, another grower in the Midwest that was growing lavender. And this was actually 2 weeks after transplant. And in the root shot here, it's not fully rooted out, but as you can tell, that lavender is one of those crops that does not like wet feet, and it really likes to have well oxygenated roots. And so the grower was extremely happy with how these plants were rooting out in just after 2 weeks. Here's some lobelia. Again, plants look fantastic. Scabiosa. We get from growers is, well, okay, so it grows fine. We've seen that, but how does it work when overwintering? As you know, many of these crops are kept for 1+ years in production at the nursery, and so they have to be able to come back out of dormancy without any issues. And so these are some shots from growers that we took. So on the left-hand side, we see the control mix, which is a peat perlite bark mix. On the right-hand side, we see the mix containing 30% HydraFiber. As you can tell, there's really no difference in the tops of plants, how they're coming out, but one of the other key differences that we see here is the rooting. We are seeing better rooting in the mix with HydraFiber, but again, no issue there with Achillea. Now here's a shot of Echinacea. So again, on the left-hand side, the control. On the right-hand side, the HydraFiber mix with 30% HydraFiber. Again, we're getting excellent performance of the Echinacea, so no issues with it coming out there. And then I believe this is the last shot that we have here. Again, the same control on the left. On the right-hand side, we have phlox and growing in 30% HydraFiber. Everything looks great. Our theory here is that, actually this is something that we had going into this particular study, is that, the wood fiber, because it's so light and airy and it has very high airspace when it adds to the mix, we think that may have an insulative effect, which may be contributing to why some of these plants seem to be doing well, especially in the root zone coming out of dormancy. Now, I just wanted to touch on, in this part of the presentation, some work that we did with Dr. Glenn Fain at Auburn University. And this is a perennial shrub trial that we did with him. So on this particular slide here, some data from pH and EC that was measured in both Heuchera as well as Coreopsis. These data points were taken towards the end of the trials. One thing I wanted to point out is, number one, we had no significant differences in any of the treatments with regards to fertility or with regards to pH. Now, I will make a note that we do see low pHs, in fact, lower than what I would like. In this particular study, we only used pulverized dolomitic lime, which is commonly used in the horticulture industry. One of the changes that we would make is to increase the rate of lime in these mixes so that we get better longevity. But an even better option would be to supplement the mix with a coarse lime source, like a 12 by 50 mesh, at probably 3 to 5 pounds per cubic yard would definitely help to maintain the pH at a more optimal level. But regardless, we had the same pH results, and overall, in the plant shots that we'll see in the next upcoming slides, that the pH really didn't have a negative impact on any of the plants themselves. Here's a slide of a lineup of Coreopsis verticillata Zagreb. In this particular crop, we had no significant differences between the various treatments. So in this trial, we had 2 controls, 100% bark, and then 80% bark, 20% peat. And then we had 2 mixes containing HydraFiber 20 and 30% HydraFiber. Now here's some Heuchera. In this particular instance, we did see significant differences, and the differences are notated by the letter. So plants that have share a letter mean that they share the same performance. So like the 80% bark, 20% peat compared exactly the same as the 80-20 HydraFiber mix. The 80-20 HydraFiber mix performed the same as the 100% bark control and then the 30% HydraFiber mix. But even though in this particular instance we did see statistical differences between the treatments, I would argue that in terms of significance, we saw no real differences. So in other words, the differences in biomass that we measured here in this particular study really are not meaningful to the grower because all of the products were sellable at the end of the study. Okay, here's a shot of Loropetalum. Again, no significant differences in terms of shoot dry weight. All the plants looked great when they were done. And then last week, you can see here in the image that plants maybe look like they have a slight disadvantage in the HydraFiber mixes, but when we look at the statistics, the shoot dry weight was not significant at all among treatments. And this is just really, we had a lot of variability in the treatments themselves for this particular species. Again, there was no issues across the board. Now, another question that we get when it comes to perennials and transfer in the pots for so long, how does the substrate hold up in terms of shrinkage over time? I know many growers have the concern about, HydraFiber being a wood-based product. Is it breaking down in the pot? So what we did at the very end of the study was we had the Auburn researchers go in and measure the substrate shrinkage at the end of the study. And what we found was that both controls as well as the 80-20 had exactly the same amount of shrink statistically. We had slightly more shrink in the 70-30 mix. And looking at the data, what we think is going on is that the 70-30 mix has 10% more compressible material. As we think about the both 80-20 mixes, 20% of the mix of the peat or the HydraFiber is compressible, whereas the bark really doesn't compress. And so what we think is actually happening is we're getting, and we have more compressible material. And we actually think that if we had a 70-30 bark peat mix to compare, we would have statistically the same amount of shrinkage there. But regardless, we don't really see a major issue with substrate shrinkage per year of production. Let's just summarize what we learned today. HydraFiber can be used successfully in both perennial as well as shrub production. HydraFiber blends performed equally or better than the controls that we tested. And we also had no issues with overwintering plants, and HydraFiber has been a success. And we have a fair number of growers all across North America that have been using HydraFiber for several years now that have been very happy with how it's performed. At this point, that's the presentation for today. If there's any questions, I'd like to take any of those now. And if not, we certainly welcome you to visit us at our booth, where we have several technical reps available. You can also visit us at our website. you could call us or even email us at the email address below. And again, I'd like to open the floor up to any questions that there may be from the group. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. I appreciate everyone's time, and we look forward to talking with you in the future.